Introducing the only compact import truck with 4 doors. The all-new Mazda B-Series Cab Plus 4. V6 power.
Whoa. Yeah.
4 doors.
Now your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
In the same areas that got flooding rain overnight are getting more rain and thunderstorms this afternoon. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Weather Center. I'm Mike Motley.
And I'm Jim Cantor. We're also watching the possibility for strong to severe thunderstorms up in Minnesota and the heat wave continuing across Texas. Let's begin this half hour with flooding in Kansas City, though. Moderate to heavy rainfall falling in Kansas City overnight. Sunday morning routines were interrupted by high water on the streets. More showers and thunderstorms are forming this afternoon along the stalled out front. Be careful. As you see streets covered with water, you can never be sure just how deep that water is. And how many times do we show you video on the channel of people going through the water, their car stalls out, and they wind up becoming a part of the river? Not pretty sights, especially if you got kids in the car or whatnot. Not a smart move. All right, here we go. I'm not going to father and mother you to death. You've already been going through that for all your life. Here's the big high pressure over Texas and Oklahoma. That's why it's going to be drier here. The front sinking south may set up the thunderstorms a little bit farther south for Arkansas and Kansas and northern Oklahoma today. So Kansas City, Columbia, Missouri, you may be out of the woods a little bit. Notice, though, the axis of cloud cover is still sitting right over you, but look at where our storms are forming, right here where the best sunshine is. We also have a pretty good amount of low-level convergence, in other words, where the air is coming together. Here comes that new cold front. That's going to spark off some thunderstorms. Actually, it already is. And storms are rapidly developing over the Intermountain region in the west. Here's a look at the rainfall since 8 o'clock this morning. You can see who's gotten it. Yeah, Kansas City was still wet. Most of the rain came actually before 8 o'clock this morning, but we did have another dose this morning. And look who really got it this morning, southeastern Missouri, where we had flood warnings until 2 o'clock this afternoon in Floyd and Madison counties. We take you east where the beginning of that thunderstorm complex has really washed right out around Nashville. But on the tail end of it, some thunderstorms are starting to go west of Jackson, Tennessee, and those continue to push on off toward the east. Also, as we take you upstate, you can see the showers just kind of hanging around St. Louis and Columbia, but nothing like what we dealt with yesterday. A lot of rain-cooled air here. Where are the storms now? Well, they're developing in central Arkansas, Pulaski County under a severe thunderstorm warning. And the atmosphere trying to get going here in southeastern Kansas, but having a difficult time doing so. We take you into Denver. Boy, I wonder why Cheyenne is having so much problem with ground clutter. That's kind of, see all that? That's just what we call AP, anomalous propagation. It's the radar obviously being a little bit too, what we call sensitive, and that's why you get all this stuff around the radar. But just ignore that. The real McCoy is right here. These are all rain showers and thunderstorms developing well east of Denver and Colorado Springs, but certainly out toward Lyman. Watch out for some flash flooding as the storms are developing and moving off toward the southwest. Here are the storms developing around Bemidji, Fargo. If these do pulse up there and get rather strong, they could produce some damaging winds. And storms racing to the west toward Naples, maybe even developing as far south as Fort Myers. And finally, we can take it to Savannah, Georgia, back across southern Georgia, also northern Florida. Some slow-moving, heavy rain-producing thunderstorms here. What's happening with all that heat? Let's find out how hot it got in Dallas today with Mike.
Well, the Northeast is enjoying a beautiful weekend with no rain and highs only around the 70s and 80s. In Texas, however, the deadly heat wave continues with most locations seeing the mercury climb to 100 or so. Folks in Tulsa have learned to take care of their outdoor activities early in the morning and late in the evening. Temperatures will top out around 100 again today. A few more clouds tomorrow may help keep things just a bit cooler, but not a whole lot. Dallas, another consecutive day. I think it's like 20 days in a row. Around 101 right now, so it's been over 100 for the last couple of weeks or longer. And in 105 in Oklahoma City, so the heat continues into the southwest. The heat indice or heat index for Monday continues back into Texas, southern Arkansas, Little Rock southward, much of central and northern Texas, and southern Oklahoma. You're in that danger zone once again into the west, southern California, and areas of concern in the southeast, and even some caution into the Midwest with our very warm temperatures hanging around the middle section in the southwest. Temperatures in the east have been rather nice on this Sunday. 70 in Beantown. We're at 82 in NYC, Philadelphia 85, and Washington, D.C. at 80. Over the Golden Triangle in downtown Pittsburgh, 79 degrees. Into the Midwest, temperatures are like this. We're at 77 in Cincinnati. St. Louis, you've had showers there in 67. KCMO also at 67 and 71 in Lincoln, Nebraska. Looking at some of the records from yesterday, or the one record, we hit 106 tie in Oklahoma City yesterday on July 25th. So the warm weather continues, and we're at 105 now, so it's about the same. 1 degree cooler in Oklahoma City. Dallas at 101, Houston 97, New Orleans 87, and in Florida we're at 88 at Miami. Factor in the heat, it feels like it's 107 in Oklahoma City. Feels like 104 in Dallas, 103 in Houston, feels like 99 in San Antonio, feels like 106 in Brownsville, feels like 97 in Miami. Now looking at the west, we're looking at 106 in Phoenix and 101 in Las Vegas. Warm temperatures there, and into the northwest, 80 or 96 in Spokane, so some very warm temperatures. Now looking at what to expect for the rest of the evening, we're looking at temperatures that will be rather warm again in the southeast, and showers and thunderstorms along the frontal boundary. That's the big story for today. That will continue into places where they don't need the rainfall, and that's in Missouri, upwards to an inch or more rain south of I-70, especially in the Ozarks region, in between Kansas City and going down towards Springfield. That stationary front will pretty much stay in the
Time to give you an idea what's happening across the states and as well as the tropics. A lot of problems with potential flooding out there tonight, all the way from Idaho, Utah, New Mexico, on into Missouri again. Several counties that got as much as 5 to 10 inches of rain last night around Rolla are under a flood warning once again. Let's take a look at our tropical update right now as we start off with the upper level winds. And we actually have a tropical Atlantic that is dominated by upper lows, or lows trying to develop in the upper levels, or even troughs for that matter. You can see one of them right here sitting over western Cuba. This has actually moved west now. This thing's really hauling off to the west. There's another one right here. You can kind of see it. We just have one little area here. We don't really have it closed off, but it's spinning around. And then there's kind of another trough sitting underneath this high pressure. And that is either doing one of two things to this area of low pressure. It's either helping to fire it up, or it's not doing anything at all. But the good news is, this is probably the most interesting thing in the tropical Atlantic. And of course, the second part to that good news is it's so far out, we have tons of time to watch it for you. And I'm actually surprised with all the waves that have come off the African coast that this has been the one that's been the most impressive so far. And you'll see that in just a second. Again, look at this upper low. It's already sitting here in the central Gulf of Mexico. So it's really moved off to the west quite a bit. And of course, coming along behind that quickly is the tropical wave. Some pretty heavy convection over central Cuba. And as we take you on north over the Keys and across southwest Florida tonight, some pretty heavy thunderstorms. So this wasn't even a sea breeze day. This was just a predominant southeast flow coming on in where the storms fired in the western part of the state. But if this low decides to weaken a little bit, or if we get a convective blob out on its own, that would be of concern. But right now, this is not a favorable area for development. All right, we have to go down here really to find what would be a favorable area. And so far, the convection has just started This is the time where you typically see more showers and thunderstorms, and right on cue, we are getting that all the way from the Yucatan on eastward. We take you eastward, and you can see on the infrared satellite imagery here, Puerto Rico, beautiful day in Puerto Rico. There's been a couple of showers over the islands from Barbados on northward, and they've moved on off now. But other than that, most of the Atlantic, especially the central Atlantic, is very, very quiet. We take you to the east, and there is a large convective blow-up out and through here. This is one of the bigger ones that we've seen thus far. But one of the keys that John and Steve tell us about is, you need persistence in through here. But certainly the conditions in the low layers have been very, very favorable for development out here. As a matter of fact, all the way from about 40, 45 degrees longitude onto the African coast, they are favorable right now. And looking at some of the ship reports south of 10 degrees, they did denote a west-southwest wind at anywhere from 10 to 15, 16 knots. And the pressures are right around 10, 13. So this is obviously an interesting area. But the good news is, here's the African coast, and here's this convective blob. So we got a long time to watch it. But do not let your guard down. June and July are extremely mundane when you compare them with August and September regarding hurricanes. Especially as you go back 100 years, you can see there's a tremendous spike in the hurricane development as you get into August and September. Darby's been quite an interesting story. Our first major hurricane of the season in the Pacific, back down below major hurricane strength this morning, and now back up a little bit. There it is, 115 miles an hour. It's Cat 3 again. Moving west at 14, 960 millibars is the estimated pressure. Obviously in no man's land here, 1,200 miles to the southwest of Cabo San Lucas. Now you will notice that our outer ring of our central dense overcast, which is this orange area here, is kind of shrunk in a little bit. And it looks like earlier on in the visible that the eye was starting to get a little shrouded. But this is still a very powerful hurricane. I mean, no doubt about it. And all shipping lanes obviously need to keep interested in it. Because it is very well maintained and virtually uninterrupted by any other synoptic scale or larger scale weather feature, it could stay strong for the next several hours. As a matter of fact, the hurricane center really slows in weakening this, even though as it moves off toward the west-northwest, it will eventually get over some cooler waters. But you can see where it is with respect to Baja and also the Hawaiian Islands, way away from everywhere. Convective storms continue tonight around Little Rock, Arkansas. Very, very heavy rain there. Southern Mississippi, West Tennessee, and look at the west. We've got flood warnings all over the place here. Lincoln County, southeast Utah, or actually northeast New Mexico, south central New Mexico, and down
York peppermint patty. Get the sensation.
Heartburn at this hour is a nightmare, but the minute I take Malox, I know help is on the way.
1 minute Malox. Malox goes to work on stomach acid in 1 minute. Pepsid AC could take over 45 minutes to affect acid, so count on 1 minute Malox.
Now your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Christina Abernathy. We've got some stormy weather to tell you about out there, some unsettled conditions in a few areas of the country. We'll have more on that coming up in just a moment, but first it's time for our tropical update. And we start you out with the big picture out there, those upper winds. And what we're seeing is not a whole lot going on out there. A few areas we're watching, but in the Gulf things pretty quiet, and for much of the Atlantic things pretty quiet. We do see a somewhat impressive wave off the west coast of Africa, and we also see the interaction between an upper low and a tropical wave in the Caribbean with a bit of wet weather and some storminess associated with it. But right now, no signs of any immediate development with anything that's going on in the tropics right now. Again, most of the Gulf pretty quiet, at least the northern Gulf. And as we move on to the south, again, the interaction between an upper low and a tropical wave have kept things a little soggy and a little stormy here, and we'll continue to watch out for that. But for the most part, again, not a whole lot going on, at least not right now. We'll continue to watch all of these areas, and if anything does get better organized or anything does show signs of developing, we'll let you know. And pretty quiet here out into the Atlantic, although when we head off the west coast of Africa, we do see a wave here that sort of caught our eye, and we're going to continue to watch it. Fairly impressive, and we will continue to monitor it, and if anything, again, gets better developed or better organized, we will let you know. A bit of climatology, hurricanes per 100 years, and we would tend to see a peak here in September. So heading into the heart of the hurricane season, we'll be watching very closely for any activity, and again, the hurricane season from June to November. And anytime during these months we can have tropical development, but again, we tend to see a peak here, at least climatologically speaking, in September. Well, that's it for the Atlantic. Let's head over to the Pacific and check out Hurricane Darby, which is now centered at 16.5 north, 128.2 west. That puts the center 1,260 miles southwest of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. The maximum sustained winds 115 miles per hour, moving off to the west at 13 miles per hour, and the pressure is 960 millibars. And a look at the satellite view, we do see a very well-defined eye here, and we're going to continue to monitor Hurricane Darby, although we do think that while it's looking pretty healthy right now, ultimately what we're going to see is a slow weakening trend with this. And again, we'll keep you updated and let you know what indeed does happen. But here it is, just giving you a perspective on the big picture out there. We continue to watch it moving away. And again, you can make out the eye quite clearly here as well. Well, that's it for the tropics. Let's head back to the U.S. and see what's going on here. And we do have some rain and storms to tell you about. A couple of fronts we're watching. One here through the northern plains and into the upper Midwest. With that, you've had some wet weather, the UP of Michigan and into northern Wisconsin. And then a front which is more or less stationary here through the southeastern U.S. and trailing back into Texas. We've had some rain and storms associated with it too. And they're still rumbling out there in parts of New Mexico and Texas and into Alabama. High pressure and control across the northeast, keeping you pretty quiet. But again, with both of these fronts, we've got a little bit of active weather. And take a look at the radar picture. Rain here, look out northern Wisconsin, and we're into the UP of Michigan, maybe around Marquette. And into Birmingham, you've had some soggy weather, still seeing some storms here through the northern and central part of the state. Showers diminishing for a lot of Florida, and then into the Four Corners we go, where the rain continues here, some storms too. Some of these could be strong. Look out in several areas across the country, maybe a little bit of rough weather for you out there. We've got some storms now in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, where you see the yellows and the reds. That's where the more intense storms are occurring right now, but you can have wet weather around Liberal or Amarillo, and again, some storms are embedded within this. Also, another area that's seen some storms in Birmingham, although much of the activity has moved off to the south now. Still some showers to the east of town, but the more intense activity has moved on to the south along I-20. Watch out, maybe a bit of a rough go for you in these areas. And finally into